Hello. Welcome to Japan. Thank you. It's good to be back.
When were you here last?
I love Japan. I was not in Tokyo, but was here in Japan. This was 3 years ago, Kobe. And but my first trip actually was very late in my life. My first trip to Japan was only about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I traveled a lot. I felt like all the money that I saved as I was a kid in college was to go travel. And I went to, backpacking through so many different countries, and I very naively felt like I consumed so much Japanese culture in America, from anime to technology, that I can wait. There's some other places I want to see sooner because they are so foreign.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was here for 3 weeks, and a couple days in, it hit me, and it wasn't I love food, so. You have an amazing bowl of ramen.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, no surprise. Of course, great, it's phenomenal. Some fresh fish, sashimi. Again, it's expected. Okay, but then I had literally the best cup of coffee I'd ever had in my life here, and I'm thinking, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. There's not thousands of years of coffee culture here.
Yeah.
But someone was like, you know what? I'm gonna be the best damn coffee maker and bean roaster ever.
I know.
And devote decades of his life to it.
Yeah.
And it's impressive. It is a special place for that. So for me, as now a businessman who gets to come here for work, it also is a delight because I get to come as a tourist too.
Yeah.
And partake in a little bit of the best of the best of so many things.
I might never leave, man. I've been here for about 9 years.
Yeah.
It's going well so far.
Dude, it's remarkable, and I have. What's great is I have more excuses now than ever. We have a couple. We have investors here, but one of our portfolio companies, Standard Cognition, has been making great strides here with Japanese businesses as customers. So
and we want
maybe I'll end up like you, man.
You should.
Just never leave.
So we want to get into the Standard Cognition story as well. And I think most everyone here is familiar with Reddit and with yourself. But just in case, can you just tell us what's your elevator pitch? Who is Alexis Ohanian?
Who am I? Co-founder of Initialized Capital, Reddit, dad, husband, and just all-around fan of technology.
Yeah. So when I was explaining to people kind of who you are, I would kind of contextualize it by saying, so first, he helped make one of the largest websites in the U.S. I think the news came out, it was number 3.
Number 3, yes.
And then as the second
act. Coming for you, Facebook.
Yeah. And then as the second act, you and Gary Tan, who was also a partner at Y Combinator with you guys made Initialized Capital, which I think within the past 5 years has a portfolio of has a value of $20 billion.
Yes. Yeah, we've made some good investments. So some great founders we get to work with.
So that's an insane rate of success. And in terms of that kind of switch to venture, what made you and Gary decide to start Initialized in the first place?
Well, so Gary and I were both founders who had success with our own companies, but who wanted more out of the investors we had, frankly. And so like entrepreneurs, like creators, we thought, all right, how do we make something better? How do we build something better? How do we be the early stage VC firm that we wish we had? And Initialized was a chance for us to do that. I mean, we started it actually without that big vision. We started it because we were becoming active angel investors. And basically other people with more money wanted to give us their money to invest for them. And we were like, oh, I didn't know how this worked, but okay, sure, we'll start a VC fund. And then it grew and we found success. And then about 3 years ago, we really made the decision to really go all in. And Gary, to his credit, was the one who was like, we have to do this. He led the sort of charge and stepped away from Y Combinator, said, we have this vision where there's this space now in early stage, that there aren't enough people out there really working to support it and help it in the right sort of best ways. And Gary's a compelling guy.
Yeah.
And had built a community of people who really respected him, not just for what he could do as a creator or what he could do as an investor, but also for who he was as a person. And having that foundation has been, I mean, that's the reason we've had so much of the success we've had. It's quite formidable. Yeah.
And so you have a philosophy of you want to be the first check-in. You want to be like the first capital that the investor, that the founder receives. How do you choose your founders? What is your investment thesis?
We want to know that these founders are going to be relentless. We want to know that they are going to be capable of building something great. The honey badger is our mascot.
Yeah.
I love mascots. All of my companies have had mascots.
You're really going to like Japan.
You know what? Actually, yes, you're right.
Yeah, there's a lot of mascots here.
There's a quality appreciation for mascots and mascot design. I consider myself a connoisseur. We want to find founders who are like those honey badgers. You all are familiar with honey badgers and the honey badger meme. If you're not, please go to YouTube. You're welcome. You'll see an amazing story about a tenacious honey badger. But the other part is that the pitch gets our attention. The pitch maybe makes us perk up a little and think about the world in a very, very different way than we thought it was.
Yeah.
And so the very best pitches are a little contrarian or seem very obvious until that one moment where the founder says, but here's what we're going to do differently. Here's what everyone else misses. And so a version of each of those would be Coinbase. So we were the first seed investors in Coinbase after YC.
Yeah, and they just came to Japan too. They're opening an office.
Just rolled out. And so, now, Coinbase is this multi-billion-dollar company bringing fiat to crypto. But back in 2011, it was a solo founder, Brian Armstrong, who had a vision for what crypto could be. But Bitcoin was like, I don't know, $5 a coin. It was still a toy. It was still this thing that only a few hobbyists were into. But we believed, and to Gary's credit, the smartest people we knew were saying there's something real here. There's a there. And Brian was someone who walked away from a great job at Airbnb just after they had become unicorns.
Yeah.
And when it was so clear the company was off and running,
yeah.
he still wanted to leave to build this because he had even more confidence in that. And so it's a crazy idea in 2011 to think that goal could come to fruition. Today, it maybe seems a little less crazy because it's happened. But that was a founder who challenged our entire belief in what this could be, what cryptocurrency could be if brought to the mainstream. Yeah. And then on the other hand, you have a company like Instacart. And again, we were one of the first seed investors there, where so many people had done grocery delivery.
Yeah.
There was Webvan in the United States, which was a spectacular failure in the first bubble. So many people had done this, but what Apoorva did different was after giving the pitch of like, we're going to deliver groceries. And he said, but hold on, the reason we can do this now is because these smartphones, which are just really starting to show their strength, can run all of the operations and all the infrastructure without us having to incur any of the costs of all of our predecessors and every other pitch you've seen.
Yeah.
We thought, all right. And he showed us because he had built a first version and had 2 drivers he found on Craigslist doing the first Instacart deliveries around the Bay Area.
Yeah, that's the story where he sent Gary like a pack of beer.
6-pack of beer, yeah. And so you have one founder who's telling us about something that seems so radical and so unbelievable that like you can't help but pay attention.
Yeah.
Coinbase. And you have another founder who's telling you a story you've heard, you've been pitched a dozen times. You remember there were epic disasters here in grocery delivery, but there's a twist. And there's a why now, and that gets your attention, and that was Instacart. And so the best pitches usually are one of those two. And you got to leave the room feeling like this founder or these founders are going to be those relentless honey badgers who not only won't quit but can also recruit, who can convince someone to leave their comfortable job at Google to work for a weird startup they've never heard of, who can close their first 10 clients. And that founder doesn't have to be charismatic. They don't actually have to be extroverted. They just have to be compelling.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake I see a lot of founders making, because it doesn't need to look like this sort of salesperson extrovert. It just needs to be someone who can be compelling. Can they convince someone to quit their job, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a really good point, and I think the idea of different founders take different shapes and forms is sometimes overlooked. Sure. But it is about that tenacity, the ability to close. You can close a lot of different ways. And so this is the third time that Initialized Capital is joining Tech in Asia.
Yes.
And so that's actually kind of rare. So we've been really happy to host folks from Andreessen Horowitz, from House, from different Silicon Valley kind of institutions. And I'm curious to know what brings Initialized to Asia so much, because just a little background, we first connected a few years ago when you and Gary were planning a China trip.
Going to China, yeah.
And since then, and we've had this, to be honest, I've had that sort of conversation with other folks, and it's like, maybe we'll connect, maybe we won't, and then that next email doesn't really come. But with you guys, you check out China, you check out Singapore, you check out Japan, you want to check out Jakarta. Most US VCs see Europe as the next step. And maybe you do as well, but you're also spending some of your time here in Asia. What makes Asia part of your focus as Initialized?
You know, I don't know. I think, I mean, there's...
Is it my charisma? Is that what it is?
It's maybe. It's not strategic in that. I mean, look, we are an early stage VC fund whose mandate is to invest in US focused companies.
Yeah.
So we're not coming here to source deals, maybe one day, but there's no Initialized Japan yet.
Yeah.
We're not coming here to source deals, but frankly, I think because we are early and among the earliest stage investors, we need to be getting out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
I try to spend as little time as possible in Silicon Valley, in part because for me to do my job well, I can't be stuck there. I think when you see the really sort of dumb, head-scratching investments that come out of the Valley sometimes, some of them, I really do believe, are a byproduct of a kind of monoculture and a kind of malaise that happens when you're just around people who all the time are trying to solve problems for other people who are like them. And so I think it's a huge asset to be able to come and travel, not just across the US, but across the world.
Right.
And so for me, I just think of it as like, this is where travel for me has always been where I've had some of my best ideas. It's where I've had to grow mentally. I mean, they've started researching this too, right? There's a case to be made for throwing yourself in an environment where you don't speak the language, where things are just different, because it fires up your brain.
Yeah, definitely.
It really, it's mental exercise for experience. And you could read 1,000 books or do a whole number of things, but nothing substitutes for those feelings of just needing to problem solve because you're in a different environment. Even with all the conveniences we have now with smartphones, just the exposure, I think, is so valuable. And we're not going to stop. As long as y'all keep inviting us, Gary and I will keep showing up here.
Okay, that's it's on tape. We got it. So I want to kind of shift a little bit into. You mentioned earlier that you're interested in some of the work that Standard Cognition is doing here in Tokyo. So this is a kind of an artificial intelligence-driven company. We'll get into the specifics in a little bit. But first, artificial intelligence has definitely become a bit of a buzzword. And there's kind of almost a question of, well, isn't every company using artificial intelligence in some way? How do you define artificial intelligence? What are you looking for?
So I'll admit most of the companies claiming to have artificial intelligence are more artificial than intelligent.
Okay.
And I like, that's a fact. And what we look for are very, very narrow applications where a company can start to get a competitive advantage and a moat quickly, because data at the end of the day is so much of this, right? You could have a brilliant algorithm and maybe we look under the hood and it actually is materially better than things that are already publicly released or written up. But you still have the challenge of getting a bunch of like real data and to train upon and to learn from. And so we look for the companies that have these narrow applications where they can get this data and ideally be making money doing it. And so computer vision is one of the areas where it seems to be working. because of increasing processing power and decreasing costs, because of the quality and low cost of so much hardware now to actually the cameras to take these images to help the robots see, is pushing all of the best companies we're seeing that are doing real AI in some version of it, in some version of basically computer vision. And so that's everything from, we've backed a couple of self-driving car companies, Cruise, which was acquired by General Motors, and then another called Voyage. Their clever approach was they were getting training data by running a self-driving taxi service in retirement communities. Because in the United States, these communities have as many square miles of road as many cities, and they're private. And so the fact that they only go 25 miles an hour for old people is a feature, not a bug. And so now, here they have this unfair advantage against so many others because they are able to train their cars to do what they're supposed to do, to run real-world simulations, but in the real world, with customers, with users, start building that corpus of data and get paid for it. And then you go on the list, the one you mentioned, standard cognition, is going to bring that experience of e-commerce, the simplicity and the ease to users, but also to the retailers who now will get data like they would online, but for the offline world. So it's like, if you can think of Amazon Go, you've probably seen that video, they're building the only hope every retailer in the world has for competing with Amazon Go. And it's been a great boon because Amazon just announced they're launching, I think, 1,000, they want 1,000 Amazon Go locations in the United States by 2020. That has now put a stake in the ground for all of these retailers who are looking around thinking, okay,
how do I stay?
Who's going to build this? Johnson?
Johnson.
And they turn to their CTO or their chief information something officer. And, it's hard enough for the best companies in the Valley to recruit engineers. For the Fortune 1000, it will be nearly impossible, let alone even if you could get them to work there to be able to ship really high quality first class products. So it's been this boon for a company like Standard Cognition because they have a team of some brilliant PhDs who actually have a gaming background for 3D environments that have built systems that are already now as good as humans are at checkout with like a 97-98% success rate. Because sometimes they forget to scan your Snickers bar and you get a free one. But
so actually I think we have a video of that. そのビデオをちょっと再生していただけますか？
どうも。This is live right now. Well, this is not live, but the store is live. This video in San Francisco.
これはリアルタイムで撮影されてそうです。
Right?
ありがとうございます。
And the way that they're able to do this, it's pretty low cost setup. Off-the-shelf hardware. These are cameras that are very affordable, don't need any reworking. They're just cameras that are pumping into a feed. There's a computer on site, which is about the equivalent of like a gaming PC. So a pretty powerful computer, but the kind of thing that is pretty trivial to again set up and install. And they're doing this real-time analysis of the video, and they know an entity comes in. They're not taking any of the face mapping, by the way, so they don't store anything about the faces. But they know there's an entity here. They tag that entity as it travels around the store. They can read that it's a can of Coca-Cola or a bottle of water. Yayoi KK.
Brought to you by Yayoi Counseling.
Or it's a bottle of water, and it knows no matter what angle, right? I've taken it off the shelf. I could hand it to you, and whichever one of us walks out with it, like she did, you look at your app and
it even reads like the body language, so it understands the body language of someone with intent to buy versus someone with intent
versus
to
someone
maybe
wants
steal.
To steal. No, okay. So when you first set up at the store, you're syncing with your phone.
Yeah.
So there's a process of actually downloading app the first time.
Yeah.
But then once you've gone through, it just recognizes you as the person. And
Okay.
now if you do walk in without having set up the app, as you are on your way out, you'll have an option to easily gracefully pay for it. Because the one issue they've now discovered is, so whereas you don't need people who are working the checkout, it is helpful to have, there needs to be a good name for it. Like, there's like greeters who say hello and welcome.
Yeah.
These are like good buyers.
People
who are able to tell you like, okay, no, you can walk out. Like it's not, you're not stealing. It's going to feel weird, but it's okay. Yeah, like a reverse bouncer, exactly.
Yeah.
And now this is their job is to just be helpful. Which is going to mean a better retail experience for everyone. And frankly, as someone who worked, one of my first jobs was in retail. It gets rid of so much of the worst parts of the job. And what surprised me the most, though, was when they told us maybe probably a year in that they were getting so much inbound from Japan. And at a glance, I was like, okay, well, I guess, it's surprising because normally, the United States is where you're starting this company. You would expect those businesses to be your first customers. Usually we're telling companies, like, don't try to go abroad yet. Like, just make sure you make something anyone wants somewhere here in the U.S. Go down the street. Don't try to get on a plane. But they just struck such a perfect chord because, obviously, culturally, technology has always been, Japan's always been a world leader of it. Third largest economy in the world? Third largest economy in the world. Respect, right? And then this was the part that when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's amazing. And then you all are obviously hosting an Olympics in 2020. And part of this energy, too, is the fact that Japan is going to be getting the world's attention. And part of the impetus now is also, like, everyone's expecting, the most technologically advanced, or one of the most technologically advanced nations in the world. Like, what an amazing demo for the world to see all these convenience stores have this one-of-a-kind self-checkout experience.
So standard cognition is already here in Japan as a company.
Yes, and so I was at the office this morning, and they're sorting out partnerships right now. They've announced one publicly, but there's more to come. And it's exciting because I think we've looked for a while at AI pretty skeptically because there are people who will fearmonger about how, robots are going to take over. And like, I love Terminator was a great movie. I loved it. I'm not particularly worried about that. And instead, I was starting to get a little disillusioned. I think all of us at Initialized were getting a little disillusioned because we would see the mandatory slide that just said, AI for no reason. And I think with good reason, investors tend to be pretty skeptical about it. But in the last year or two, we've really seen it, and again, specifically around computer vision, start to bear fruit where it's a really narrow application, it's really useful, and there are customers very, very motivated to get on board with it.
So when it comes to standard cognition, you mentioned by 2020, Amazon wants to have 1,000 of their Amazon Go stores.
Yes, I have to be honest, I saw it on Twitter and I did not read the article.
Okay.
But that was the headline that I saw while I was browsing Twitter in the last 48 hours.
Okay.
So I have to fact check it.
So that's a big competitor out there. But for standard cognition, I believe you also opened up a real store. In San Francisco.
And that's footage from the actual store, the standard market.
So that's a huge competitor to try and face. How do you have to kind of change your own approach to building your startup when the competition it's not just like this amorphous big company, it's Amazon, it's Jeff, he's coming for you.
He is an amazing CEO, no doubt. Jeff's track record, very impressive. And I actually believe this is a great thing for these startups. And not just because I'm an investor in them, but because what it does to the rest of the market when Amazon moves in is so visceral that it's one of the best customer acquisition vehicles out there. Instacart, like the morning the morning that Amazon bought Whole Foods, which it's probably, I think it was about 3 or 4% of the grocery market in the US. So it's a small percentage relative to everything else, but Whole Foods, it's very premium organic food, right? And Amazon buys them. And I'm texting Apoorva, the CEO, to be like, hey man, I'm about to go on CNBC. And I know they're gonna ask me, like, does this mean the end of Instacart? And he was like, no, don't worry. It's gonna be great for us. I was like, really? Like, you can level with me, man. We've known each other for a while. And he's like, no, it's going to be great for us because every other grocer in America now needs to work with us. They have to. It's not a nice to have. It's a matter of survival. And a year and a half later now, Apoorva's absolutely right. And it has been a tremendous benefit to their business. And so I think as long as you are one of the best-in-class service providers, you're going to have a great time. Because Amazon will continue to be the sort of the titan in the room, and that will force all these other retailers to have to come work with you.
Understood.
And it's exciting. I think there's been more and more discussion, certainly in the States, about the repercussions of having such large, big tech. People throw up the charts that show the total market cap of this level. These 5 big tech companies versus the rest of the S&P, and it's jarring. And I really do believe that one of the best ways to combat it, to the extent that like competition is good, which it is, one of the best ways to combat it is with these startups, because it creates this need for a business to exist, and the customers are there. They're the Fortune 1000 who don't know what to do, and I hope we can invest in many more that will try to take on Jeff, because I think it's good for everybody.
So you mentioned that the standard recognition team, they come from kind of a very technical background.
Yeah, a lot of PhDs, much smarter than me. He's very smart squad.
But in early, you said you invest in companies where the early team has that ability to close, to grit things out. So besides their smarts, what did they do that made you think this is the team that can grind it out, that can push forward in this sort of competition?
They built it. And when we looked under the hood, it was that good. And we have advantages because we have engineers on the team. Vince Chu, who's one of our engineering partners, he was like basically Gary's CTO at his startup. And Vince just went under the hood and was impressed, very impressed. And so we're like, okay, first step, like check, the tech is real. You could put together one of these demos fairly easily using just essentially off-the-shelf software. Just from published papers and libraries and whatnot. And so that was a good first step. Okay, they made a thing, and it's actually smart and good and better than anything else that's out there right now. But then they actually executed on creating it was a very janky demo, but they had a store in a room of their office that had a shelf on it. And it was just a simple shelf with a bunch of different products on it, and they just ran it every day, training. They'd invite friends over. They'd have people on Craigslist come. I mean, could you imagine getting the Craigslist job, which is like, $12 an hour to come in and like pretend to shop at it wasn't even a store. Like it was a room in their office. But they built up the training data, and they showed that they were able to not just come up with some creative software, but actually do the things they needed to do to create the physical environment, to get all the training data, and to show that like this really worked, and this was a team that could build it. And the nice thing about this product is when you see it, right, it feels like magic. And so admittedly, they have the other benefit as founders of being able to show as much as tell. Whereas if I'm trying to pitch you to come to the early days of Reddit, we don't have any users. We've got like 1,000, right? I can show it to you, and it's an ugly list of links, and you're like, not that impressed. Whereas, you spend 5 minutes seeing standard cognition, and that's a spectacle. You're like, this is cool. I feel inspired just being able to watch this thing and use this thing, let alone help build it.
Well, I look forward to trying it in Tokyo.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, it sounds like more and more of your portfolio might be moving over here.
I'm telling you, if we, I want to believe, this is right, this is the promise, this was the promise of software. Because it is in a lot of ways pretty borderless on an open and fair internet, like, that is part of the promise of having it bring the world a little bit more together. And I don't know. This is cool. I hope there can be more companies like it, not only because it'll give me more excuses to come here to Japan, but also because I really do think like technology has to play a really important role in business and in society and in so many things, because there's a lot of stuff we need to improve. And I'm a dad now, so I feel extra motivated to want to make sure to like make this thing better before I check out. So let's hope tech can be a part of it.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining us here today. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Domo.
Hope you, yeah?
Domo arigato.
Perfect. And thank you very much.